Greetings, friend, and welcome to the Between the Covers podcast, where we are working every day to remove the self-limiting beliefs that are preventing us from becoming the heroes of our own stories. I am Marcus Spar, and today I want to talk about another game that I have played in the past and have thoroughly enjoyed that has had some very good life lessons. So let's just go ahead and jump right on in. The game I want to talk about is called Stardew Valley. This is an indie title that came out 10 years ago in 2016. And gosh, it sure doesn't feel like it came out 10 years ago. However, this was a fan of the kind of farming and social simulation games like Harvest Moon and Story of Seasons and of those ilk, who wanted to ultimately make the kind of game that he wanted to play. And in fact, he's supposed to be working on another one, but he keeps fidgeting with Stardew Valley so much that he's like, I could just work on this for the rest of my life and continue to fine-tune it. The character that you create inherits a farm from his or her grandfather when he passes away. Originally, your character doesn't take it and instead continues to work the soul-sucking and life-draining job within the JojaMart Corporation. Eventually, your character decides, you know what? Fuck this shit. I am going to leave here, leave the big city, and I'm going to go to this very rural place and just start working on this farm that is technically mine now. And when you first show up, you have members of the community who are there to meet you and kind of give you some of the basics. And you see a farmstead that is in complete disorder. It has been overgrown with weeds. There are rocks and branches and logs and stumps all over the place. Before you can even begin, you have to do a lot to clear this land in order to get this work done. Which leads me to the first point, is that if we want to get where we want to go in life, it's going to take a lot of work. And for some people, this is physical work. For some people, it's more mental and emotional. For some people, it's a mix of all of that. In fact, most of the time, I would say it is a mix of the mental, emotional, and physical. And for many people, it's even work spiritually as they just try and navigate this world and try and create a space, a home, a property, a family, a community that is theirs and one that they are in fact proud of. It's going to take a lot of sweat. When you first begin, your character, as I said, was working a soul-sucking job within a supermarket, mega mart corporation. And you get to this field and you don't have the best energy for this. Like most of these games, when you start out, you are the weakest, you grow tired so much easier, you just have like the most basic of tools to work with. And as you continue to work and explore, you start getting things that are going to help you with more stamina, that are going to make it easier for you to get some of this work done. And even when you have the better tools, you still have to put that work into it. Libby and I, when she had her mental health break in 2023, in an effort to help her navigate and just find solace during that time, we set up a weekly get-together with her friends John and Dan, where we sit down and play a video game, typically over the internet. Sometimes we might get together, but most of the time we're just playing a game online. And Stardew Valley was the first game that we all played together. This was also a game that Libby and I played together relatively soon after it released. I have a lot of fond memories of this game, and there's so much for you to do. And every single time I play, I'm doing something different. The first time I played, I was legit trying to make like a sustainable farm. And mine did not compare to the work that Libby was putting into it. She just has that designer's eye that I seem to lack. When we were playing with John and Dan, I quickly jumped into the mining and the adventuring and the exploring. I was going after bounties to take down a certain quota of monsters within the mines. And I was also being the one who tried to catch all of the legendary fish. And those were challenging. The fishing game is a tough one. And we found ourselves just having so much fun making this farm the way that we wanted it to be. And it took a lot of work for us to get there. The second thing is you want to get the right tools for the job. When I first started working at the pet salon that I now work part-time in, I didn't know what I was really getting into. And in this place, they tend to have all of the things that are necessary to get the job done. You have the big baths that you put the dogs into. They're easy to clean. You have the special nozzles or sprayers that go on the end of these hoses that can mix up the shampoo and help you apply it and like really get it below the fur to get to the skin and the undercoat. They have the high pressure dryers that they don't do so much drying like what we tend to think of it as. It just blows so hard that it just wicks most of the water away. In fact, when I am working on drying a dog, oh man, I have to take breaks sometimes in order to acclimate myself to what the environment actually is, because it gets so humid back there because all of this moisture and water is just being blown throughout the room. We need the right tools for the job. And this is also something that can be so frustrating for a lot of us. With my efforts to try and get a job within the libraries over here, I couldn't even vocalize to even try and prove that I would be a valuable asset. I am doing my best to make sure that my new boss does not regret bringing me on, even if it's going to just go through the end of September like we were originally planning. In Stardew Valley, there are certain things that you cannot clear from your farm until you have upgraded your equipment. It's important for you to upgrade your equipment from the basic starter gear that you receive. You can only accomplish so much with the beginning pickaxe and axe and hoe and watering can. There's only so much that can be done. There's only so much that can be done with the very beginning fishing rod that you pick up. These larger stumps and rocks cannot be cleared unless you have these upgraded weapons or tools. The higher the tool upgrade, the easier it is to get this job done, but it also requires much more challenging materials in order to get these upgrades. And it is important that we have these right tools. We want to make sure that we have the training and the skills necessary to do what needs to be done. And I know that this is something that I have to remind Libby about quite often, because she is the one that uses the power tools. She's the one that has designed half of our garage to be the woodworking station. That's not my area of expertise. And sometimes it is important for us to invest to get the necessary tools. Is it possible that we can maybe complete a task without getting the specific saw, or say like the specific screws, nails, whatever the tool happens to be? Yeah, there are ways that you can do that. Maybe you don't need to invest in your own. You can borrow from a neighbor or a friend. At the same time, those investments are worth the cost, because they're going to make sure that we can do the job properly and safely. There have been times where Libby has been trying to saw down some wood, and it, like, the wood grips the saw blade and it jumps, and it's scary when that kind of stuff happens. Sometimes having the right tool for the job means having someone else there to prevent that stuff from happening. Now, Libby calls for my assistance, and I go out there and I help her cut down these long pieces of wood. These are valuable investments because they are also things that we can use in the future. So we want to make sure that we do have the right tools for the job at hand. The third thing is how our community makes us better, makes us stronger, and it helps to fill in those gaps that we lack. Let's face it, the notion that one man can be an island, completely false. Even if someone is a jack of all trades, that doesn't mean that they're going to be able to do all of these things just by themselves. In Stardew Valley, you have a blacksmith who can help process geodes in order to find some relics, in order to find ore, some treasures, things of that nature. And your character can go and mine the ores that are necessary to upgrade the equipment, but your character cannot actually make the upgrades. You have to take that to the blacksmith. That's something that Clint is trained in. That is something that he is capable of doing. To construct new buildings on your property, to expand your house, you have to bring in Robin. She's the carpenter. She's the one who has the skill and the training to handle that. Yeah, your character can absolutely grab the necessary materials, but your character doesn't have all of the skills necessary to do some of these tasks. And these people make us so much better because we can have our specialties. We can have the things that we excel in, and we don't have to worry about how are we going to fill in this area that we lack. If it is something like home renovation, if it's something like plumbing, if it's electrical work, things of that nature. There are people who this is something that they just come to life doing. This is something that they love to do. They have taken the time to get trained in order to do this. And yes, I absolutely get the value of trying to save a buck and do some of these things by ourselves. And yet, I have also heard so many stories of individuals who have tried to do some of these renovations themselves and they don't do it right, and then it ends up making matters worse to where they still have to hire someone to come fix what they had done. And then it ends up costing more in the end. Is that necessarily what you have to do every single time? No. But it is something to put into consideration. It is something that is valuable for us to consider so that we can get these jobs done, either if you need it done efficiently or if you need to have the job done cheaply. That can help you determine how to navigate through this. The fourth thing that I want to say here is every community has a Pam, and many communities have more than one. So who is Pam? Pam is the mother of one of the bachelorettes that you can romance in the game. Pam is an out-of-work alcoholic, and she spends so much time just drinking in her trailer. And then at night, she goes to the bar and just continues drinking. Every single time you run into Pam, she is inebriated in some form or fashion. Eventually, you can repair a bus, and then she will start driving the bus, and hey, she has work again. And yet, there are a lot of people out there who turn to some kind of substance in order to cope with the world around them when things legitimately are unfair. And the world is going to be unfair. There's no getting around that. When the world is unfair, a lot of us turn to coping mechanisms. As I talk about with the work that I do with clients, we do a ton of work trying to overcome maladaptive coping mechanisms. These are ways that we cope that are not actually helping us. They're causing problems. They're trying their best to help us out, but in the end, they're causing more harm than good. I don't know of too many people that are very productive as alcoholics in society. And if alcoholism is something that you struggle with, please, this is not a judgment against you. I have had my own struggles with substance abuse. I have to be very careful about consuming alcohol because sometimes I just like the buzz that I receive from it. It's a great way to distract from what's going on. It's a great way to lower my inhibitions. I get it. It's something that I have to be careful with. I have to be careful with sugar and with foods. I have to be careful in order to make sure that I am properly coping with what is happening around me in the world. And there are a lot of people who are like Pam. A lot of people that turn to some kind of substance in order to numb the pain. And sometimes your community has just a Pam. Sometimes your community has more than one. These people, as much as I would love to say that the work that I do is very the work that I do is very fulfilling, and I do a lot to try and help people. And yet, at the same time, I'm also not naive enough to think that I am going to be without a job anytime soon. The number of people that I talk with when I bring up that I am a life and recovery coach and that I work to help people overcome these poor coping mechanisms, I have had people look at me and say, wow, I bet you are busy right now. And honestly, I wish I could say that was true. If that was true, I wouldn't be having these comments about working a part-time job because I would be spending all of my working time really, helping people. And in fact, if there is any way that I can help you, then please get in touch with me. You can set up a free 60-minute call and we can talk about what it is that you're struggling with, how I can help, and if we're going to be a good fit for each other. If you just want to ask some questions just to kind of get a feel for it before we have a call, then you can get in touch with me at questions.btcpod@gmail.com. I really do look forward to hearing from you. And believe me, when I say that our communities can have more than one Pam, I am not being hyperbolic about that. I have been in churches that have had recovery groups where there are dozens of men who are struggling with some kind of unwanted sexual behavior. You take a look at things like AA and some of these other support groups, and you see how many people are struggling with these substance abuses, with these addictions. You see people who cannot seem to get rid of these maladaptive coping mechanisms. As much as they try, these coping mechanisms seem to dictate what they do and where they go, not so much their higher order thinking. These people, they're always going to be there. I wish I could say that that wasn't the case. I really, really do. I tell my clients that my job is to put me out of a job. And I also know how hard that actually is, because every single generation has its own troubles that it's going through. I don't know what's going to happen with the coming generations with the taco in chief right now, who has decided that bombing Iran is the best course of action right now. This is turning into the Vietnam of their generation. I did not grow up when the Vietnam War was happening. And I'm seeing this war, and it's like there's no reason for this. There's no purpose for it. There is just a horrible loss of life, horrible abuses of power. People who are so insecure with who they are that they have to act like these alpha males or whatever you want to call them. And that's actually making matters worse. That just pushes people away. And the generations of my nibblings, they're going to have their own things that they are going to want to cope from in order to avoid. And so we're always going to have those Pams. We're going to have those people who are living less than their best because they cannot seem to get out of their hang-ups in order to experience something better than what has become their status quo. The last thing that I want to say here is corporations don't have to take us over, though they will try in more ways than one. We're seeing this so much right now with everyone pushing out some kind of AI, some kind of large language or language learning models. We are seeing resources being consolidated into the hands and pockets of so few people. And these people, these corporations, these CEOs, these tech industry giants, we can call them, they're trying to do everything they can in order to shape our society so that it works better for them. There was a time when I felt a company like Google was actually doing stuff that was going to help people. They were creating tools that made life so much easier. Well, I don't buy into that anymore. I don't believe that Google has my best interest at heart. It only has the interests of its shareholders, of its upper management. Amazon has helped out so many people, and yet we see Jeff Bezos, who is donating so much money to people in power in order to stay on their good side. And what would happen if those donations went to his community here in the Pacific Northwest? What could that do? Yet, that's not how he's trying to shape his community. That's not how he's trying to shape society. In Stardew Valley, you have two places that you can shop at. You have Pierre's, where you can buy seeds, you can buy some backpacks and, things that are going to help you with actually making progress of making your farm productive. You can also go to JojaMart, and it is a very industrial and sterile place that it is one of the few places that when you actually enter it, there is no music in the game. You only hear like the sound of fans buzzing. It's kind of gross, and it's also a very fair summation of what a lot of these corporations are trying to do. They're trying to streamline. They're trying to make things more efficient. They're trying to do more with less. Sound familiar with what's happening right now? Oh, God. And yet, while you are playing through the story of this game, you can choose who it is that you side with. You can do a ton of work in order to help Pierre thrive and have his shop be the best shop that there is. And it can actually force JojaMart to close down because they can no longer compete. Or you can choose to side with JojaMart. And if you do side with JojaMart, then that is going to have an impact on how the city looks, because this corporation is going to do all that it can to make the valley that you're living in look like its image, like JojaMart's image. That's not where it ends, though. If JojaMart is kicked out, eventually Pierre decides, hey, you know what? I'm going to be open 7 days a week. Guess where he learned that from? That's right, JojaMart. This industrialized market was the only place that was open 7 days a week. Pierre was at least closed on Sundays. And as soon as JojaMart gets out, we can say within this realm that, yeah, in the game, you still want to have your players be able to purchase the seeds and vegetables and fruit and everything like that they need in order to continue making the game work. At the same time, I've known a lot of people who have bought into this model of living where they are more focused on trying to get as much money as they possibly can with what little time they have. And it seems to be even more prominent today, again, as resources are being consolidated into the pockets of so few people. It is harder for individuals like myself and probably like you to earn the living that we would like, to have that kind of stability. And it can be so easy to give up on our beliefs, on our morals, to give up on our own health in order to pursue this larger number in a bank account. I know I have been guilty of that as much as anyone. That is a conversation Libby and I have, we've had quite a few times. I was going to say recently, but I honestly don't remember the last time we had one that was that recent. But it's something that we've talked about several times just over this last year. There is always this concern of making sure that we get the right amount of hours in. Because guess what? If we don't, then we're going to miss out on some payments. And that's not a place that we want to be. So these corporations, whether they take over the community like JojaMart can in this game, or whether you kick them out and they cannot survive, there is still an influence that is being made on our lives every single day. I would highly encourage you to keep an eye on that. And I also want to point out the hypocrisy of this statement, because the time of this recording, it's Memorial Day. I was not planning on working today. And in fact, as I'm recording this, I'm recognizing just how heavy my eyelids are becoming and just how tired I am. I definitely could use this time to better give myself rest. But why haven't I? Because I look at the next 2 days that I'm going to be working at the pet salon, and then all I'll have is Thursday and Friday, and I don't know when I would have the time to get some of this work done. And yes, that is hypocritical, and I own that. I can confidently say that the reason why this is happening is because of this capitalist society that I grew up in and I continue to be saturated with. It doesn't have to be that way, though. We can prioritize our rest. We can prioritize our health, our mental well-being. We can make ourselves a priority. Not just a bank account, not just a savings account, not just a boss. We can make ourselves a priority. And it's up to us to do that. I hope you found this valuable. About 5 out of the 10 things that I wrote down of what I have learned from Stardew Valley. And one of these times I'm actually going to get through items 6 through 10 of one of the lists that I've already started. Yet as I was sitting down and having some lunch today, I'm like, you know what? I'm starting to get some ideas. Just maybe it's because our friends John and Dan are getting married soon, and Libby's making perler cake toppers of the characters that John and Dan made in a game of Stardew Valley that the two of them played by themselves. Maybe because I saw the perler pixel art of these characters, but I've just had Stardew Valley on my mind. It's like, yeah, there's some good lessons to be learned here. And I hope that you can take them to heart like I'm going to do. When I'm done here, I'm going to be done working until tomorrow. I definitely need rest. So take care of yourself. Keep doing the best that you can. Keep prioritizing yourself and the people that are helping you to be a better person. And we'll talk again next week. And until then, live strong for today.